Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I would like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Cambium Networks. Today's host is John Mead. He is their Senior Director of Engineering and Product Development, and he'll be presenting here today. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and John will answer them at the end of today's presentation. John, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate your time and looking forward to the information you're going to be sharing with us. I am finished for now. Please go ahead and take it on over.
Great. Thank you, Julie, very much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So today I'm going to talk about the Ethernet switching portfolio at Cambium Networks. I've been at Cambium for exactly 3 years, 3 years as of last week. It seems like 3 months. It's gone by very, very fast. But anyway, Ethernet switching at Cambium, we've been doing a lot of things, very busy. So this is what I'm going to try to cover today in the next 30 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer, and then some Q&A after that. But start off with a high-level overview of our Ethernet switching portfolio. Then I'm going to jump right into policy-based automation. So this is a capability, a feature that we have on our switch that's really gaining some traction in the industry with customers as well as analysts. So I'm going to go through policy-based automation in detail. But then I'll back up a bit, talk at a higher level, talk about our roadmap. I'm going to talk about what's new and about what's coming next and what to look out for. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. Okay, so here we go. So when I started 3 years ago, spent the first 6-9 months kind of evaluating the market that we want to participate in and what our long-term strategy is going to be. And this is a slide that I used for almost 2 years now. I stopped using it for a while and I decided to put it back in my deck just to give you a long-term view of where we're headed. So we're building switches to go after 3 different deployment scenarios, or 3 different use cases. And we can't build just one switch for all 3. They're different enough where they do have to be different. Now we do have a common hardware architecture for all 3 families of switches. We leverage a lot on that. We also have one common software base for all 3 families of switches. So that helps. Same features, same look and feel, same capabilities, and so on. So over on the left, you see our enterprise indoor access portfolio, and this is our current solution. We've been shipping this for about 1.5 years now, and we've been adding more and more SKUs to this enterprise family of switches. The big news, the exciting news that's coming up is these other 2 families of switches. They're in development as we speak. We have prototypes in our labs. We're going to be entering beta soon, and I'm kind of jumping ahead. I'll go into this detail later, but this is what's exciting. The next 6 months are going to be very exciting. So these 2 other families, one targeted at our tower or WISP deployments, and the other family of switches targeted at a true outdoor switch, IP67 rated, outdoor video surveillance type of deployments. And then, of course, maybe I don't have to mention this, but all 3 families of switches can be managed by our cloud or on-premise based management. So we support cnMaestro, and very, very soon I'll be talking about this. We also support our new XMS cloud solution as well. Okay, going just a little bit deeper on our portfolio. So enterprise switching, where are we at? So in December of 2018, we started out with 4 switches. That's an 8-port switch and a 24-port switch. 2 versions of each, one with PoE, one without. So this 8-port switch and 24-port switch is our base. That's our foundation of this family. Just recently, I'll go into detail more on this in a bit, but we came up with 4 new SKUs. We have our multi-gig solution that gives you the 2.5 gig connectivity, as well as a few variations of a 48-port switch as well. So also exciting, just in June, we released the EX1K family, which is part of this enterprise solution, and I'll talk more about that later. Just started shipping these switches in June, so about a month ago. And then coming up in about a month, and this isn't publicly announced, so you guys might be hearing this for the first time. We'll be announcing it soon, but more of the 1K family will be coming out. So what we released in June were the 24-port switches. What we're releasing in August is our 8-port switches. So we have 24 and 8-port switches that we've been shipping for a year and a half. That's our 2K family. And now we're introducing the 1K. All right, so that's our enterprise portfolio as it looks today. And we're still working on new SKUs to add to this as well. The WISP family of switches, where are we on that? So this is the big news, is we have 3 switches we're working on for the TX2K family of WISP switches. And the first of those 3 switches is available in Q4 this year. The next 2 are going to be coming out in Q1 of 2020. On the video surveillance side, we do have our video surveillance switch coming out. I'll talk more about this later, but it's an IP67 rated switch, supplies PoE to the devices that you need in this remote location. And that's available in Q1, maybe late Q1, maybe Q2 of next. Okay, so the enterprise portfolio, what you see in this picture is our wired and wireless solution from Cambium, right? So we got our 8 Ethernet switching SKUs shown here in this picture. We also have a long list of our Wi-Fi access points, and we have our cloud-based management with cnMaestro or XMS. So it really is a very comprehensive 100% complete solution for the edge of the network or for the access layer of the network. Now, a little bit about the functionality of these switches. So these are enterprise-grade switches, okay? Fully featured QoS capabilities, security capabilities, and so on. Fully featured enterprise-grade switch, fully managed, right? So when you buy a switch these days, you can get switches that are unmanaged, switches that are smart managed. But for an enterprise deployment, for a robust deployment, you really want a fully managed switch. We have a very comprehensive COI. It uses a Cisco-like syntax. We have a nice user-friendly web GUI. And then, of course, what I've been mentioning and what I'll continue to mention is our cloud solution with cnMaestro and XMS. Our switches do have 10 gig uplinks. A lot of switches out there that you'll see today, some have 10 gig, a lot of them have 1 gig uplink. So keep an eye out on that. We do have, most of our switches, we have 4 10 gig SFP plus. Intelligent PoE. So a lot of people take PoE for granted. I do. I've been delivering PoE on switches for 20 years. We put a lot of intelligence into our PoE, right? So on a per port basis, you have full control of monitoring the stats, how much power you're pulling. You have full configuration capabilities on a per port basis. You can enable it, you can disable it. Something that we just recently added to our cnMaestro interface is the ability to toggle the PoE. So a lot of times you might want to toggle the power to a specific device that's not acting correctly. So you just toggle the power, reset that device, and away you go. It's a very convenient, user-friendly capability. And I mentioned user-friendly. That's one of the big themes of our switches is we want our switches to be easy to use, easy to maintain, easy to manage, easy to configure, very easy to deploy. So I'll talk about that a bit. Okay, moving on. Advanced features. This is a L2 switch and an L3 switch, not just static routing. We do support full dynamic routing with GRIP and SPF. We have advanced features from a security point of view, from a management point of view, but also we have a feature called PBA, policy-based automation, which I will spend a lot of time talking about a little bit later. Last but not least is zero touch. So what does zero touch mean to you? If I ask 10 people that question, I'm going to get 10 different answers. So I'll define what I mean by zero touch, but we do have a very comprehensive zero touch solution for you. Now, topping it all off, we do have a 5-year limited lifetime warranty. So we put a lot of time and effort into the quality of our solution, and that's why we do have this 5-year warranty, as opposed to a lot of manufacturers. So everything I've mentioned today, everything I've mentioned, the cnMaestro cloud management, all the features, it comes with the base price of the switch. There's no subscription fees, there's no license fees. So if you consider that, consider the 5-year warranty, consider all the features I've mentioned. The support at Cambium is very good. When you call for help, someone will answer the phone. and I've heard very positive responses from customers as far as the support goes. So including all those things, we really do feel we have best in class total cost of ownership. All right, PBA. I don't know where to put this in my presentation, but I put it up front because I'm very passionate about it. You know, you can buy a switch from 10 different vendors, 20 different vendors, and all those switches are going to be reasonably good. Switches are a pretty mature technology. You have L2 capabilities, you have L3 capabilities, the list goes on, and you know, 90% of the switches out there, you don't have most of those features. I could talk about our cloud management. I really do think we have a superior solution with our cnMaestro. It is a very good solution. I can talk about our 5-year warranty. I can talk about that we're an L2 and an L3 switch. There are other vendors out there that have those things too. They might not have all the things I just mentioned, but they definitely have some of those. The one feature that really differentiates us, that really sets us apart, is policy-based automation. I'm going to talk about that and tell you exactly what it is. It's getting a lot of attention from our customers that are actually using it. Also a lot of attention from analysts. Anyway, so here we go, PBA. So what is PBA? What do we do with it? So from the security point of view, you know, we very closely monitor every device that is plugged into our switch. And when a device is plugged into our switch, we gather as much information as we can about that device, and we use that information to profile that device. And based on policies that the network administrator has set up, if we match one of those policies, we can automatically configure the switch from a security point of view, from a configuration point of view, from a network access point of view. So it really helps us automate everything. Now, from a security point of view, all this auto configuration that I'm talking about is automatically removed from the switch when you remove that device from the switch. So I'm going to talk a lot about how the switch is automatically configured, which is great. But even more important is this ability to auto clean up that configuration, auto remove it. Okay, moving on. Simplicity. So what PBA really does for you is it provides a zero-touch environment for the user, right? Not just the initial deployment of the switch, but also as you use the switch for your daily operations. When you add new devices to the switch, if you move devices from one port of one switch to another port of another switch, or you just simply remove a device. Everything I just mentioned is fully automated. So you get a zero-touch environment, not just for the initial deployment, but also for day-to-day adds, moves, and changes. Now, every port is created equal. If you create a policy for, let's say, video surveillance cameras, you can plug that video surveillance camera into any port you want, and the PBA will detect that device and automatically apply the configuration to the switch and to the port that that device was detected on. So no longer do you have to pre-configure ports ahead of time for these devices. So if people want to automate the configuration, sometimes they'll pre-configure ports 1 through 4 for, I don't know, access points, and they'll pre-configure ports 5 through 8 for video surveillance cameras, and so on. You no longer have to do that. So what does this give you? Well, it eliminates the manual configuration that you would otherwise have to do. And that manual configuration is very error-prone and very time-consuming. There's a stat that you can read about out there, and I don't know if I believe this, but they say 80% of all network issues, network failures, are related to some type of misconfiguration. So PBA, it automates the configuration. It eliminates possible mistakes. Now, when you do these add, moves, and changes, it's more of a physical thing, right? You physically unplug the device from one port, you move it to another port. There's no trained IT staff that is needed for that. They don't have to log into the configuration of the switch. They don't have to change the configuration, which opens up more chances for errors. So you don't need a trained IT staff for doing these adds, moves, and changes. You just physically move the port. So overall, reduces time, energy, and costs required for management. All right, so zero touch. What is the definition of zero touch? So zero touch means zero touch. You don't have to manually configure the switch. And when people talk about zero touch, they usually talk about this initial deployment of the switch, right? When you initially connect your switch to the network, there is some base configuration you want on that switch. So a lot of customers will pre-stage their switch, right? So they'll pre-configure the switch in some location, and then they'll plug it into the network later. So how do you automate that, right? This initial configuration. Some examples of the initial configuration are static VLANs. Which ports are going to be your uplink ports? Do you want any type of link aggregation or some type of port channel? What's your IP address going to be? Are you going to use DHCP or is it going to be static? So anyway, so these are examples for your initial configuration. And how do you automate this? Well, today we automate this with cnMaestro. So when you connect your switch to the network, we will automatically, the default state of the box will automatically establish communication with cnMaestro and get its initial config from cnMaestro and automatically apply it. So this is pretty interesting. This is pretty cool, and this is what most people think of when they talk about zero touch. However, I think this is only half the problem. The second half of the problem is, what about the configuration that is required for your ongoing network changes? So for your daily operations of the switch. So when you connect devices to your switch, how do you automate that configuration? Some examples are, I connect an access point, right? I want to put that access point on this certain VLAN, set up my QoS settings correctly, so on and so forth. It's not just the port that you connect the access point to. What about the uplink port? The uplink port needs to be configured correctly as well. So it's the same thing when you connect any device, cameras, printers, or any type of IoT device. So now that we mentioned IoT devices, that could be thousands, right? So when you connect a device to your network, if you have a policy for that device, boom, auto configuration. Now, in addition to connecting these devices to the network, what about removing devices? I mentioned that earlier, right? When you remove a device, you want to clean up that configuration. Two reasons. One, to increase the security. You don't want to leave a port open on a pre-configured VLAN that might be a sensitive VLAN for like the financial data or something. The second reason is just to keep your configuration clean and manageable on your switch. It's very easy for your configuration on your switch to grow out of control and to be very hard. So what is our solution here at Cambium? How do we automate this day-to-day configuration that's needed for day-to-day operations? Well, that's what PBA does for you. This is policy-based automation. A little bit of how it works. So policies are created to match types of devices, right? And you can create up to 50 policies. For access points, you only need one policy to match all your access points. Or for video surveillance cameras, you only need one policy. So 50 policies is a lot. We are going to increase that, however. It's easy to do. So policies, they can be created using any one of our management interfaces. You can create it with your COI connection, either local console connection or via some. You can create it via the web GUI, or you can create it with our cloud management solution on XMS or cnMaestro. So that is the preferred mechanism. And the reason why is cnMaestro is a system manager. It manages the entire network. So if you have one switch, great. If you have 100 switches, great. So if you create a policy on cnMaestro, it will push that policy down to all 50 switches in your network all at once. So now you can plug your access point into any port of any switch with just the configuration of that one policy. So these policies are made up of two components. One, there's a match criteria, right? So how do you know that that device is an access point, or the type of access point you're looking for? You might have multiple types of access points, right? How do you know that it's an IoT device of a certain type of thermostat or something? Anyway, we use two match criteria. So LDP, Link Layer Discovery Protocol, is a protocol that exchanges a packet of data between two points, so between the switch and the device. So that LDP packet is made up of many different little data snippets, and we look at all those data snippets and we store that information, and we can use any of that information for matching. The other match criteria we use is the MAC address of the device. We can do an exact match for a MAC address. We can look at the MAC UI, or we can look at a range of MAC addresses. which is very, very useful. Now, once you have set the match criteria in this policy, the second component is what actions do you want to take? This is the auto configuration I keep talking about. So what VLANs do you want to create on your switch? And what VLANs do you want to make that port a member of? What are your QoS settings? You know, your user priority bits. What do you want them to be if you want to take additional QoS into account, right? What is the mode of that port? The PoE priority, right? So these PoE switches have a finite amount of PoE budget. Our switches have a pretty good size PoE budget, 400 watts for our 24-port switch, as an example. But what if you exceed that, right? So what we do is we start pruning ports and we start removing ports so we don't go over that 400 watt limit. Well, which ports do you prune first? Well, you can set the priority of each port. And so like your very important critical devices like video surveillance cameras can be set to critical mode. So PoE priority can be low, high, or critical. Port labeling is a very useful feature. No longer do you have to manually enter the description field that says, I've connected a printer to this port. You know, manually entering that means when you move it, you have to remember to manually change that description that you entered. So we will auto fill in that description. If you move the device from one port to another, we will automatically move that description to the new port. Protected port, that's something new we just added. It's not available today. It's available in our release that's coming out in August. So we have a feature called protected port, meaning the data to and from ingress and egress of that port will not be sent to any other port, any other protected port on the switch. So for example, it will only go to the uplink port of the switch. So if you have a multi-tenant environment or apartment complex, you know, data from one apartment won't be shared with data in another. Anyway, that feature is a feature that we've had for a while, but being able to automatically mark that port as a protected port is a really cool aspect of it. So all the configuration I've been talking about as a result of these policies, we consider that configuration dynamic, meaning it was not configured statically by some user interface. So any dynamic configuration will be automatically removed and cleaned up if you remove that device from that port. Or let's say the switch powers down, all that configuration is now gone. When the switch powers back up and that device is detected again, then the policy will be available. So quick summary on PBA. What does it really do? It automates the adds, moves, and changes of network devices that are connected to your switches. It eliminates the error-prone manual configuration. So time savings and reduces the errors, reduces the troubleshooting necessary. Every port is treated equal. Enhances security by auto-profiling each device connected to the switch and auto-segmenting that device into the correct subnet or to the correct VNet. It reduces the expenses required to deploy and manage the network. All right, PBA still, I'm not finished yet. So a few examples and stories. So I talked about zero touch. So if you use PBA with cnMaestro, how do you get this true zero touch environment? It's really, really easy. And I want to offer to everyone here a hands-on demo at a later time. So if you want to see a hands-on demo, I didn't have time to do it today. I'd be more than willing to do that for you. But anyway, 3 simple steps. The first step is to create the configuration of cnMaestro. So what configuration do you want in your switch? What is the initial configuration? But also, what policies do you want on your switch, right? So just set those up ahead of time, right? So create this configuration. And this configuration that you're creating, it can be for a new stack of switches or a new group of switches, or it can be based on the configuration that is already there for an existing stack. Okay, step 2 is these new switches that you're adding to your network, you need to claim them with your cnMaestro cloud account. So you open up your cnMaestro cloud account, you enter the serial numbers, and you're good to go. When you enter the serial number, you will also assign that switch to an existing switch group that you've previously created, or an existing virtual stack that you've already created, which is what we did in step 1. And step 3 is you unbox the switch, you plug it into the power, you connect it into the network, and you're now finished. Everything else is automated. So I do want to point out a few things. The switch that you just plugged into the network, it's 100% factory defaulted switch. There's no need to reconfigure anything on that switch. And this step 3, when you connect it into the network, this can be hours, days, weeks, or months after you've completed step 1 and step 2. So you can purchase your switches, you can get the serial numbers, you can do step 1 and step 2. And then when you receive the switches, maybe you're not ready to deploy them yet. Maybe you have a cycle where you're going to deploy these switches a month down the road. Well, at that point in time, you connect them in, you're ready. Now, once you do connect the switch to the network, it automatically goes out, reaches out, and it finds cnMaestro, it establishes communication with cnMaestro. It checks this serial number that has been claimed. And so it goes through this onboarding process. And during that onboarding process is when that configuration that was up in cnMaestro gets now pushed down to the switch. And again, you're finished, right? You don't have to do anything. Now, when you're ready to start connecting devices like your video surveillance cameras or so on, the PBA policies that are already configured, they've already been pushed down to the switch, they will take effect. So, all you do is start connecting in devices and you're good to go. Again, you don't have to log into the switch and do any manual. Okay, so when I give people a demo on PBA, I have a switch, I have 2 or 3 switches, I have 1 or 2 video surveillance cameras, I have 1 or 2 access points, and I give the demo. And it's pretty cool because I show the config on the switch and it's empty. I plug in a camera and then I show the configuration. All of a sudden you have pages of configuration on the switch. And then I remove the device from the switch and I show the configuration again. All of a sudden the configuration is gone. So it's a great demo to give. But think about a real life example. You have 200 switches that you're deploying at some type of campus environment or stadium environment or something. And in that environment, you have 200 video surveillance cameras and you have 100 access points you want to deploy. For this example, all you need is 2 PBA policies, 1 for cameras, 1 for access points, and you're done. Now you just physically plug in these cameras and access points. And again, remember, you can plug them into any port, any switch, and the configuration is automatic, 100% error-free configuration. Another example here. So this is a pretty cool thing you can do with PBA. So let's say you want to set up one generic policy that catches all devices. Any device that you can think of that you plug into your switch will match this generic backup or default. And that default policy can be configured any way you want it. It can be set to a VLAN that you don't care about, a guest VLAN, let's say. You can set the quad settings to very low, and so on. Now, this default policy that you set up is step 1. Step 2 is to create additional policies for the devices that you do carry. So in addition to these generic devices that you may not be aware of, people are plugging in devices into your network all the time, but for the devices that you are aware of, like your video surveillance, you can set up a policy for those devices specifically, and you can put those devices on preferred VLANs. You can give them preferred quad settings, so on and so forth. The end result is that only the devices that you specify will be put onto the more higher precedence, higher priority VLANs, and so on. Okay, another example. I think this is my last example. So accidental disconnection. This is a funny story to tell, but it's a true story. It happens quite often, actually. So let's say I'm walking through the wiring closet and I accidentally trip or yank out a cable out of the switch, and I'm kind of embarrassed about this, and I pick up the cable, I look over my shoulder, I make sure no one's watching, and I plug it back into the switch, and I see the lights light up, so no harm, no foul. However, I plugged it into the wrong port. Right? So what this causes in a normal environment is loss in connectivity. Let's say I unplugged an access point. Well, when I plug that access point back into another port, it's going to get PoE from that port, so the access point does power up. It will start advertising its configuration, the SSIDs that it knows about. Wireless devices will attach to that access point. But the new port that access point is connected to has not been configured with the necessary VLANs for those SSIDs. So you get loss in connectivity, you get a lot of trouble calls, tickets filed with your support department. This does not happen with PBA. So when you unplug a device from one port, we automatically remove configuration from that. When you plug it back into another port, we automatically detect the device and automatically apply the correct configuration for that device. So PBA can really solve, I mean, I have several examples of this happening in real life networks. So PBA will prevent this problem. Okay, let me take a step back, return back to our roadmap. So where are we today? So in April, we shipped our 3.0 release, big release. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple slides. 3.1 is what we just shipped in June. And this is when we released for the first time our EX1K switches. And these were our 24-port switches, with also some software enhancements and features in 3.1. Now, what's coming next? So in the middle of August, we're going to have our release 3.2, and we will have our 8-port 1K units available to ship as well. The 14th of August, they should be sitting in our distribution center ready to be shipped out. We also have some pretty cool software features coming as well in this release. The one I want to highlight is support for XMS. So about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, we acquired Xeris, which is a new line of access points, and it comes with XMS, which is a cloud-based management system. With our 3.2 release, we now can be managed not only by cnMaestro, but also by XMS. Now, 4.0 is when we start releasing our new WISP portfolio of switches. So as I said, one of the 3 switches will be released in Q4, and this is our 16-port version, which I'll talk more about. In Q1, we release the 2 other WISP switches. So in Q4, it's our 16-port switch. In Q1, it's our 8 and 24-port switch. We also release our video surveillance outdoor switches. So these next 3 releases are on track. They're all committed programs. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's new. So covering the last couple months or so. This 3.0 release, which I've mentioned a couple times, it was a big release for us, significant amount of content. So hardware platforms, 4 new hardware platforms. I'll talk about that in a bit. New accessories. So I've been asked for the full 3 years that I've been with Cambium, I've been asked for, do we have Cambium branded transceivers? Now we do. Starting in April, we have our own Cambium branded transceivers, long reach, short reach, 1 gig, 10 gigs, so SFP, SFP plus, and we support copper transceivers. You can buy these transceivers to plug into our SFP ports. So like on our 24-port switch, we have 4 SFP plus ports, right? 4 10 gig uplink ports. On our 24-port switch, same thing, 4 uplink ports. So you can buy transceivers for these ports, but these transceivers will work in other vendor switches as well. So you can buy these transceivers not only for our switches, but for the switches on the other end as well, or for other locations in the network. So 3.0, long list of software features. The one I'm going to highlight today is in cnMaestro. We have this enterprise view. It's a GUI-based configuration view, a significant enhancement for cnMaestro. And with that, we support virtual stacking. So you'll hear me refer to it as groups of switches or virtual stacks. Same. Anyway, it's available in April, a couple months ago, so we've been shipping now. It's available. Now, in the right side of the slide, you see a little power supply, right? So that power supply is going to be used in one of our 48-port switches, and it will also be used in our WISP switches. So I'll talk more about that in a bit. All right, so here's a little bit of a deeper dive on our 48-port switches. It's a 48-port device, 4 10 gig uplinks, so it's actually 52 ports. I always refer to it as a 48-port switch, or 24-port switch, but that number doesn't include our uplink ports. So we, like I 48 port switch, we have 52 active ports. And that's why it's called the EX2052. Anyway, we have 3 versions of this 48 port switch. We have a non-PoE version, so 48 ports, no PoE. We also have your standard PoE version. It comes with an internal power supply. You get 400 watts of PoE power to distribute across the 48 ports any way you want. Plenty of power for some applications, not enough for other applications. So the third version of the switch that we have is a switch that takes a removable power supply. This is a pretty cool solution. It provides a very flexible environment for the customer. The customer can grow without having to replace his switch. So a very nice migration plan or transition strategy. If he's using devices today and he doesn't need more than 500 watts, he can buy our smaller CR units. But as time goes on, if he starts using devices that require more power, he can always upgrade to a more powerful supply. We have supplies 500 watts. A supply that has 500 watts of PoE. It's a 600 watt supply. Or we have a 930 watt supply that gives you 840 watts of PoE. Or the big one is 1200 watt supply that gives the customer about 1,000, a little bit more, about 1100 watts of PoE power. So anyway, very flexible for. Then also you'll see here, we have power supplies that take AC power as well as supplies that take DC. Okay, moving on to another one of our new hardware platforms. This is our multi-gig switch. So our multi-gig switch, we went with a kind of a hybrid solution. So very powerful switch, lots of functionality and capabilities, but at a very reasonable price. So we have standard 1 gig Ethernet access ports. We have 8 of them. But what's new about this switch is we have 6 of these multi-gig ports, or 2.5 gig capable ports. Now you don't need 2.5 gig for the printer that you're going to hook up, or for a lot of other devices that you need. But for some of the more advanced access points, specifically 802.11ax access points, or Wi-Fi 6, right? So for some of those access points, they can go over a gig for sure. So these 2.5 gig ports are very valuable. Now, one more thing to highlight on these 6 ports, they also support 802.3 BT or 4-pair PoE. So we can give up to 60 watts of power on these 6 ports. Standard Ethernet switches give up to 30 watts. So 802.3 AF or AT gives you up to 30 watts. But anyway, these 6 ports will give you up to 60 watts. So some of the higher end cameras, some of the higher end access points will require more than 30 watts. So very useful for that. Now on the switch, we also support 10 gig fiber optics SFP+ ports. Okay, a little bit about the cnMaestro enhancements. So before 3.0, we did support cnMaestro, but from a configuration point of view, we only supported configuration via template files, or you can think of these as COI scripts. COI scripts are very, very powerful. Some people will continue to use those. Power users love it. But majority of users want a user-friendly GUI as well, and that's what we provided in this 3.0. So with cnMaestro version 2.3.1 or later, and with our 3.0 cnMatrix version, you get this GUI-based interface. It makes it very easy to deploy a Cambium wired and wireless solution together as it manages both cnPilot and cnMatrix. Now, what you get with this is virtual stacking. So this means you can logically group switches together. Like all the switches in one wiring closet can be grouped together as a stack, or all the switches on an entire floor can be grouped together, or an entire building can be grouped together, or multiple buildings, all the switches in multiple buildings can be considered one virtual stack. What does that mean? That means you can manage those switches as if they were one. If you create VLAN 20 on one of the switches, it automatically, VLAN 20 gets automatically configured on all of your switches, whether it be one switch or 100 switches, it will get automatically configured on all. If you create a PBA policy, it will automatically be created on every switch, not just one switch. So it really solves the management challenge of managing a large number of switches. Okay, I keep talking about this new family of switches within our enterprise family, our enterprise solution. So this EX1K switch. So what is it? Well, a little bit about the market, right? So these switches are targeted at the edge of the network or the access layer of the network. This is a huge space in the industry, right? I'm not talking about data center switches. I'm not talking about core switches. I'm only talking about edge switches. It's an $8 billion market. So in that $8 billion space, companies like Cambium and other companies, like Cisco and HP and everyone, we have multiple solutions to cover this space. So a lot of people will have 2 solutions to cover the access space or 3 solutions to cover the access space. Here is our strategy at Cambium. So we're going to come out with the cnMatrix 1K, the EX2K, and the EX3K. Now the EX2K is the sweet spot. I truly believe it's the sweet spot, and this will be the majority of the sales. And that's what we've been shipping for a year and a half, and we keep adding to it. But now we have the cnMatrix 1K. It has a few less features at a lower price. So the cnMatrix 2K, I would lead with the switch. This is the sweet spot. If the 2K is too high of price for whatever solution you're discussing, then I would move down to the cnMatrix 1K. Now, from a list price point of view, the 1K is approximately half the price of the 2K. So the 24-port switch 2K, which is $12.95, the list price on the 24-port 1K is roughly. So here's some details on our 24-port switch. So what are the differences between the 1K and the 2K? Well, on the 2K, you get 4 10-gig uplinks. On the EX1K switch, you get 4 1-gig, 4 down to 2. We support L3 routing on our EX2K, not just static routes, but dynamic routing as well. On the 1K, we took away the dynamic routing. So you get static routes, you get intra-VLAN routing, but you do not get dynamic routing with nodes. The third thing that you lose on the 1K switch is our PUE power budget. On the 2K, you get 400 watts. On the 1K, you get 200 watts. The out-of-band network management port. In this picture here, you can see that it's missing. So on the 2K, on the right-hand side, you'll see an additional RJ45, which is for a true out-of-band network management port. It's a cool feature. Not a lot of customers take advantage of it, though. Anyway, it's not. We don't support this on the 1K. Now, PBA that I keep talking about. You buy a 2K switch, PBA is yours, no licensing, no subscription, no problem. On the 1K, you do need to buy our cnMaestro Pro license, which is not released yet. We have been talking about it with our customers. So I think we've renamed it. Actually, it's not cnMaestro Pro, it's cnMaestro X. Anyway, if you buy that license, you get PBA, no problem. A very reasonably priced. Okay, moving on. Now, this was the 24-port switch. On the 8-port switch, I won't go through the details. We're a little bit late on time, but it's very similar to the 24-port switch. Less PUE, no dynamic routing, no out-of-band network routing. All right, a quick sneak peek on our WISP switches that I mentioned earlier. So we have 3 models coming out: an 8-port, a 16-port, and a 24-port switch. Now, out of these access ports, you also get 4 additional uplink ports. So you get 4 fiber SFP plus ports. Now, these access ports, one thing to point out is 24-port switch, these access ports are made up of 16 copper ports and 8 fiber ports. You get 8 1-gig SFP fiber ports. Another thing worth mentioning is the power supply on all these switches use our removable power supplies, our CRPS units that I just talked about that we released in April. You can choose between the AC supplies or the DC supplies. Now on the 16-port switch, the one in the middle, we actually have slots for 2 power supplies. So that means that we support redundancy. The switch works absolutely fine with just 1 power supply, no problem, no limitations, no restrictions at all. But if you want to plug in a second power supply for redundancy purposes, So if one power supply fails, no problem, the switch stays up. Okay, for this WISP industry, it's important to support some type of GPS sync signal. Okay, so for our Cambium sync, we have an internal GPS module on these switches. So you can plug in a external antenna, and that's what that little yellow circle is. And right below that yellow circle is an RJ45 jack that can be used for Cambium's CN pulse. So we have two mechanisms to get this GPS sync signal onto our switches. Customers can use one or the other, or both if they want redundancy. From a PUE capability point of view, we support standards-based PUE just like we do on our enterprise switches. But in addition to that, we also support low voltage passive PUE. So half the ports on these switches support the low voltage passive PUE. The other half of the switches will support 4-pair PUE, which gives you the high power, up to 90 watts of power on these ports. And that enables us to power up some of our higher end radios at Cambium. For example, our Medusa product that requires 90 watts. Okay, just to summarize, this is not just a sync and power device like Cambium's CNM5 device. It also is a full-blown enterprise-grade L2L3 switch. Everything is available on the front panel, including the grounding lug. On the 16-port switch, we support dual redundant power supply. We have redundant GPS sources that I just mentioned, and we have our 10 gig fiber. And then on the 24-port switch, we also have our 1 gig fiber. Okay, last slide to summarize. So enterprise-grade switches, remember that, fully functional layer 2 and layer 3 switches. This is a true cloud management solution. It's not something that's been, it's not a square peg shoved into a round hole, which is what you see at a lot of vendors. This is a true, developed from the ground up, cloud management solution with cnMaestro and now XMS. Ease of use, a very, very important thing for us. Easy to deploy, easy to manage, easy to maintain, easy to configure. So the zero touch I talked about with PBA is a very useful feature. Enhanced security, automatically profiling our devices, and automatically segmenting those devices into the correct networks. Complete solution at the end. cnMatrix, cnPilot can be a wired and wireless solution with our cloud-based management. It is a very comprehensive solution. 5-year limited lifetime warranty and best-in-class support, really delivering a best-in-class TCO. Okay, that does it for me. Thank you very much, everyone. It wasn't too long. Hopefully you were able to stick with me here. Julie, back to you for any Q&A.
Thank you very much, John, for that wonderful presentation. And it looks like I do have some questions here for you. Let's get started with the first one. Question here, does Cambium offer design support? Is it available to Microcom sales reps if they need it?
Well, I can give you my phone number. Sorry, we do not have professional services as a formal support, but we do it on a case-by-case basis. So this would have to be worked out individually. But yes, we can support that if that's the.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next question here for you. Regarding the fully managed switching, will this only control and or monitor Cambium manufactured products?
Yes, that is true. Currently, we can configure and monitor Cambium products. So if you use cnMaestro, you can configure and monitor all of Cambium products, no matter what you use. We do not yet support or manage, configure third-party devices, although in some cases we can do minimal monitoring.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Next question here for you. Is there an advanced subscription or license fee outside of the free access?
So from a support point of view, yes. From a feature capability point of view, no. You get all the features with the base price, and you get this 5-year limited warranty that I talked about with the base price. That 5-year warranty covers our normal typical hours of support. We do have some advanced support options that you can purchase. I don't have the details memorized, but it gives you 24/7 type of support. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Next question here for you. Regarding zero touch pre-configuration, do our customers, would they reach out to you to have this done before shipment, or are you referring to the vendor configuring it?
Yeah, great question. So this is for the network administrator for that network. So he will create his own policies, and the policies are very flexible, and I'd love to demo it to you, but the configuration screen for configuring a policy, well, I mean, I could configure a policy for a camera in 30 seconds or less. It's very easy to use, pull down menus, drop down menus. So the network admin will set up one or more policies for his network, and he can modify them over time. He can remove them over time. He can add new ones over time. So these policies are not something that is pre-configured by Cambium. These policies will be configured by the network admin. Now let me add to that. There is an exception. We have a brand new feature, and it is supported in our 3.2 release that comes out towards the end of August. And that new feature is called Auto VLAN. And what that means is that when you plug in a cnPilot access point into our switch, you don't need a PBA policy. We will automatically detect. So we have a proprietary mechanism for communication between our switch and the cnPilot devices. And so we learn a lot more about that device than we do about third-party devices. So we know what needs to be configured on the switch based on that. So without manually creating a PBA policy to do this, which you can do, no problem, we will automatically configure the switch for that access point. So the exception, what does come pre-configured from the factory, starting with our August release, is you plug a cnPilot into our switch, and you don't need to do any manual configuration. You don't need a PBA policy. The switch will be configured automatically, so that for all the SSIDs that AP advertises, those SSIDs are mapped to VLANs. Those VLANs are automatically configured on our switch, not just on the port that you plugged in the cnPilot, but also on the uplink port. So your egress tagging rules are set up correctly, your native VLANs or your settings are set up correctly. So
Thank you, John. Next question here for you. What are the warranties on your devices if they are pre-configured? Is there a difference?
No. And as we just answered in the last question, we don't pre-configure our devices before shipping them out to the customer. The feature I just mentioned, Auto VLAN, that's not really a configuration. You can disable it or enable it, but it's an automatic feature that will automatically do the configuration. So.
Thank you, John, for that clarification. Two more questions for you. Next one here. Can cnMaestro be accessed remotely?
Yes. So cnMaestro is located in the cloud. We use Amazon Web Services, and we have servers located globally all over the world. And if I gave you a live demo, I would just go to my web browser. I would log into my cnMaestro account. I would, and then I'm up and running, and I can do that from my home. I can do that from anywhere I am in the world. I can launch my cnMaestro account, and away I go. I would love to do a live cnMaestro demo for anybody if they would like to do that. So.
Excellent. Thank you for that, John. Last question here for you. Generally speaking about Cambium's support, is there a phone number or a link or a website that anyone can go to 24/7 to reach out for support? I know you touched on this a little bit, but if you could, I know if you could answer that, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So we have a Cambium support site that you can go to, and there's a community, a chat board that you can participate in. I strongly recommend visiting this forum and watching the questions go by and watching the responses. Myself or members of my team, we respond to these questions on the forum pretty quickly. We respond pretty quickly, I'd like to say. We try to anyway. And as far as a phone number, yeah, there's a Cambium support phone number as well. However, I don't know if that phone number is 24/7 for the basic support. I think it's just 8 hours a day. Although if you call the number, I can almost guarantee you they'll answer it no matter what time of day.
John, thank you so much for answering all those questions for us today. And also, thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. And if you have any further questions, of course, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if you wish to view any of the products mentioned or shown here today, please visit us at www.microcom.us. And please remember, this webinar presentation has been recorded and it will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so you can view it again. John, thank you so much for everything today. We appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for joining. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.